All right, guys, let's talk about down payment. Let's talk about understanding how the down payment works. There's a lot of buyers that they approach me and they ask, can I offer less down or can we get into seller financing for less down? You know, I always ask, what would you do if you were in the other person's shoes? And, as a buyer, you don't want to you want to put down as little as possible on a property. But is that really to your benefit? You know, we know that the seller is going to be taking risk in acting as a bank and in doing seller financing. They're going to transfer title to the property. They're going to wait for some of their equity potentially. There's deals out there that you can do seller financing for less than 10% down. But as a real estate agent, I don't recommend it, and I don't believe that you can really truly create a win-win situation between a buyer and a seller. So what happens with that down payment? Let's assume here that buyers, I'm not breaking your heart. I'm giving you a goal to achieve a goal that you can go after, 10% down. And sellers, I'm setting you up so that you know that that buyer that we bring to the table that's making an offer is going to have skin in the game. So when we look at the 10% down, it disappears very, very quickly. Traditionally, when you're looking at selling a home, percentages might work something like this. You put the home on the market and average time on market, let's say 3 to 6 months. So you have 3 to 6 months worth of payments that you're making while that home's on the market. With the interest, that may cost you effectively a couple of percentage points, maybe 1 to 3% of sales price. Additionally, you're going to pay real estate commissions. That's going to be 5 to 6%. When a buyer comes and makes an offer in today's market, a buyer's market, they're going to ask you to pay some of their closing costs. And that could be anywhere from 1 to 3%. Additionally, there's always the home inspector that comes into the picture. Well, not always, but highly recommended, and oftentimes an inspector comes in, and their job is to find things that are wrong. So when they find things that are wrong and they send the report to the buyer, inevitably the buyer is going to ask you as the seller to fix things. That may cost you 1 to 3 percentage points. So in the end, when looking at selling a home, it may cost you anywhere from 10 to 15% of the sales price to sell that home, particularly in a buyer's market. That's not even assuming that you may have to take a price decrease, a price reduction, or you may have to accept a lower offer than what you're asking. So it can cost a lot to sell a home in today's market. When you're considering seller financing, really a seller who is paying to the real estate commission and looking at an offer, they're going to have their closing costs. And in a seller finance transaction, that's about 1%. Additionally, they're going to pay the real estate commissions, which is going to be that 5 to 6%. So we're typically looking in most situations anywhere from maybe 6 to 8%, considering some of the other closing costs that might come into play for a seller, 6 to 8% to sell that home. How that works is really, I recommend, and what we look for when we're creating this transaction is if we can get a seller 10% down, then 3% is going to go to the buyer's agent, 3% is going to go to the selling's agent, and then the seller is going to get 4%. So 3 plus 3 plus 4 equals 10%. Really, the only thing in addition to that, if the home's in good shape, is going to be title insurance, recording fees, stuff that takes place at escrow, which is typically going to be less than 1% for a seller. A buyer, you can plan on about 1% on your side as well for your title fees, your recording fees, your escrow fees. So, when we look at 10% down, that may seem a lot for a buyer. But really, at the end of the day, once the seller pays the real estate commission and their end of the closing costs, they're looking at walking away with 3 to 4% of whatever that down payment is, which really then that sets up the beautiful situation of the seller, you've got skin in the game, buyer, you've sold that property, You've gotten a price that is fair that you want. You've paid the real estate commission. You've had those that have facilitated the transaction for you, and you can walk away from that home. The home has been sold. So that's a little bit about down payment, how down payment works. There's always those deals that are less, those distressed properties that are less. But as a real estate agent, when working with a buyer and a seller and creating a win-win deal, that's what I find is the best way to set up a win-win deal. I highly recommend the 10% down using a structure like that, the 3-3-4 structure, and together we can create a win deal that everybody really can get what they want.